What is going on, Fightful Faithful? Welcome back here to Fightful Scraps, where it is me, Corey Brennan, here today for another interview. Today, I am joined by a man who is making a serious name for himself in Ireland. He's the RCW champion. He is the Irish Super Junior Heavyweight champion. He is CBL. How are you doing today, man?
Very, very good. How's things?
Good, good, good. And I just want to start with something that was recent. Obviously, over the weekend, you did wrestle LJ Cleary in RCW for the RCW title. In the build up to the match in on social media and so on that you did with Peron, you were just it very much felt like a match that was one of the biggest matches of your career, at least in terms of the weight of it all and all that. What was that like to get that match with LJ under your belt in RCW for the title?
Very, very big. You know, LJ is, I think I speak nearly for kind of a generation of Irish wrestling, that he's such a fundamental part for a lot of us. He's the most insightful coach you could ever ask for, and I've been very fortunate to learn from him since day one. So very meaningful in that sense. He's someone who watched me grow. He's someone that was a fundamental part among every step of the way. But, you know, I've wrestled him a few times, and it always seemed to be monumental kind of matches and stuff like that. I remember wrestling him in a singles match in Fight Factory about 2.5 years ago. And I remember that being a huge step up at the time. It was one of my first big singles matches. I remember the first time I got to wrestle back home in Longford, it was against LJ. And I feel like every time I've wrestled him, the stakes got bigger. The field was bigger. So, you know, definitely coming off a win in December, I'm winning the RCW championship. You know, that's a big win for myself. And I want to be a key representative. I don't want to just be champion and delight for myself. I want to push. I want to push the company. I want to push the championship. I want to push myself. I want to push everyone on that show. And, you know, there's no better way to challenge myself in doing that, and wrestling the best wrestler in the country, which is LJ.
Absolutely. And you mentioned you wrestled him a couple of times, like you said, and Fight Factory and so on. And like I said at the start, you are the Irish Super Junior Heavyweight Champion as well. Someone that you wrestled recently in Fight Factory was James Storm, and which was another big match, and big smile on your face there when you when I mentioned that. And it's kind of almost, I feel like it's a kind of a different match for you with a veteran, obviously LJ this weekend, and then prior to that, James Storm. But what was that like with James as someone who's world traveled as he is?
An insane moment in my life. I was a big TNA fan growing up, a big Beer Money fan growing up. I was very vocal about it being like a dream match that I always wished to have. So when the opportunity came, it was crazy, but I knew no doubt in my mind that I was very ready for the opportunity and I had earned it. And just to clarify, it's the Irish Junior Heavyweight Championship.
Sorry.
Get that right.
Yeah.
It's in many ways it's the biggest match that championship has ever faced because James Storm he's a former TNA heavyweight champion. He's a 7-time TNA tag team champion. I believe it's 7-time NWA tag team champion also, I believe. He's a historic figure in wrestling, whatever way you want to look at it. And it's crazy, absolutely crazy. But as well as I said, with RCW wanting to actually push everything, I'm glad I could be the person that got to wave the flag for Fight Factory and Irish wrestling in a match like that.
And just with holding both those titles, obviously, when people think of Irish wrestling, the first thing that comes to mind is OTT. But you've been one of the probably the biggest names kind of coming through the scene. Who has been? You have made appearances in OTT, but you do very much feel like an RCW and Fight Factory talent. Is that something that kind of has kind of been something in the back of your mind, or to get to OTT in general, or have you just been looking to, as you said, be as big a representative? As big a representative for RCW as possible?
Yeah, I want to be a big representative for absolutely everywhere, really, in Irish wrestling. I really, really care about the scene, and with 2 heavyweight championships, that's crazy. 2 heavyweight championships at the one time in this little small country, and I'm being given a huge platform there and a huge opportunity. And of course, I want to be a key representative. I'm like the front runner of spokespeople for both of those promotions, and I want to do the best job I can with both of that. Of OTT, I guess is a funny one as well, because I've had a funny little history there of being kind of back and forth with it. And I guess I feel like right now, if you go back and watch the local rumble, I feel confident saying I had one of the best reactions of the night, and that comes from having those kind of long lasting relationships of the Irish fans and the Irish wrestling community, because people have seen me grow, people are invested, people care, and I think there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff in OTT in the future.
And and you mentioned on social media a little bit ago that you wanted to defend the titles elsewhere in Scotland and so on in the future. Is that
Mm-hmm.
something that's like a big thing that you want to tick off your bucket list in 2025?
Yeah, well, as I said, like especially like in with the Irish Junior Heavyweight Championship, there's like the lineage of that is insane to me. Like I remember when I started wrestling, the Irish Junior Heavyweight Champion was Jordan Devlin,
Yeah.
who lost that championship to Lyra Valkyria. Like, yeah, and then from there you
Yeah.
have Fabio, you have LJ Cleary, you have Villette and Buzzard. It's there's a lot I want to follow up on. And I want to make my mark with that championship as well, and like utilize that platform also, and wear that with pride. And like I've already been the first person to defend the championship in Spain and in Germany. So exciting, exciting, exciting. And in terms of Fight Factory, we've grapple games in May, which is going to be a big one. It's already a star-studded lineup for the Irish Junior Heavyweight Championship. It's myself, Fabio, Omari, Michael May, Renzo Rose, and of course the wild card as well. So I'm sure it's going to be a really, really big one.
And you mentioned earlier about LJ Cleary as a coach as well. And coming up in Irish wrestling, what was it? What was it like for you? Obviously, it's Irish. There is training opportunities in Ireland, but not near as much as say in the UK, in the United States, and so on. Did you feel that when you were coming up, or was it something that kind of you didn't really think of?
I think I've always, if you listen to some of the stuff like in podcasts and stuff before, I always end up going back to the same story of I'm from the back arse of nowhere, I'm from the country, like so.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a shortage of training in Ireland. I think actually for the size of us, we've got some amazing, amazing, amazing schools. Like Fight Factory here, like I couldn't speak highly enough of it. We've got LJ, we've got Katie Harvey, Phil Boyd. There's so many, Michael May. There's so many names there that like are given so much knowledge. And I've been very, very lucky to learn under those names, as well as like the School of Irish Wrestling, which is in Dublin as well. You've got some names like Paddy Morrow and Sean Maxer Guinness, and it's their lineups there to learn are incredible. And I'm lucky enough to be like Fight Factory grown, but also learn from other places like that as well. There was that thing of like being from a bit further away, and like for the last 7 years I've lived away from home just to pursue this. Which is a tough thing in itself, but it's a thing of like if you want it, you go chase it. So I'm very, very lucky to have been in a position of being able to actually chase that.
And in that, like mentioned being in the back arse of nowhere, like as an Irish person, every Irish person knows exactly what you mean by that. But in
Yeah.
a big part, your branding and your character and all that is playing into that fact, and being from Longford and so on. Is that something that's important to you to hold on to in wrestling?
Yeah, well, I think as well, like it's what you see is what you get in many ways. Like I think it's a very genuine thing, and I think people like you could look at me as a journeyman in many ways. Like if you watch, I'm sure when that match goes up online of the RCW match, myself and Clary, he speaks afterwards and kind of says how I was someone that was not a natural. I was someone with 2 left feet when I started wrestling, and I took my time to learn. Do you know what I mean? So like it's something that I feel like people can resonate with. You know what I mean? I think people love to see someone who's kind of went from nothing to something, and like right now, firing on all cylinders from coming from nothing, which is a really, I think, like a relatable story that people want to get behind, and it's just me, like in many ways, and I'm just having a great time. So like I love home. Like as I said, I live in Dublin the best part of 7 years now, and it's tough. Like I miss home, I miss the fields, I miss my folks, I miss my dogs, but like I get to wrestle. So like it just is what it is. But it's a great life to be living.
Yeah. And on the topic of characters, definitely a character that has garnered a lot of attention, definitely from Irish fans, and kind of definitely after his picture with Lyra Valkyria, uh, Gandhi. I want you to explain as best as you can for people who aren't familiar with the man, the myth, the legend that is Gandhi. Uh, do you want to just give a quick explanation there about him?
So Peter Ghandi, I'm not sure where he's from, but he's been in Granard, County Longford, as long as I can remember. He's a farmer, somewhat. He's a coach, somewhat. He's a lot of things. But I put heightened there as he's a grumpy fucker. And he's ended up kind of trying to back me there in OTT, and he's been somewhat helpful, somewhat not. He does tend to get me in a bit of trouble. But yeah, Peter Ghandi, he's quite fond of the OTT scene there, and I don't think we're going to be able to get rid of him for a while.
And definitely, like you mentioned it earlier, the local rumble and the reaction that you're seeing, but you also had a moment in the match that definitely left a lot of people just loving it. Gandhi catching you that close, as you said, and the back gave out. But just in general, like you mentioned a bit how satisfying it was to get that reaction, but being in that match with the stars that were in it, with it being like one of the biggest events in OTT's history, in Irish wrestling history, pretty much. What was that experience like for you?
It was insane. It was very heartfelt. I remember going to the very first OTT stadium, and I remember like sitting in that crowd and feeling like the genuine passion to just be a part of it, to be a part of that crowd, because like that was such a monumental stage in Irish wrestling then, and it just keeps progressing. It keeps progressing. It keeps getting bigger, and I think like kind of being in it and just being like absolutely no doubt that I belong there is like it's an exciting thing, because like it's going to keep getting bigger. It's going to keep growing. You know what I mean? And there's people, especially now with Irish wrestling, you've got people like Elgin Clary that kind of they're not around as much anymore. And I think a lot of people need to step up, and I think that's getting clearer and clearer. And I want to be one of those people. I want to be someone that's pushing the scene, that's pushing everyone on the mats, and just keep getting better.
And with that in mind, is there anyone else that you think is someone that is going to step up into that gap, other than yourself, of course?
I think there's a lot of like fantastic talent in the country right now. Someone that I've kind of had my differences with, but can't help admire, is Renzo Rose. I think he's one of the most superb talents on the island. I think there's a lot more, like Fabio as well as another one who I've had my differences with, but absolutely no doubt he's pushed me to my limit and helped me progress as a wrestler as well. So I think, look, there's a lot of talent there, and there's a lot of people coming up, and it's going to be an exciting few years, I think, ahead of us.
Absolutely. And you've been like champion for over 500 days at this point. You've wrestled some of the top stars in Ireland and so on. What are the big goals you have left in Irish wrestling in 2025?
Yeah, I want to keep up like Grapple Games, as I mentioned. Grapple Games was the match I actually won there during Heavy Championship in. So I'm going into that match with the intentions of going back to back. I'm going to utilize that platform down in Cork. As I said, I beat LJ Clary, but I challenged that, and I wanted that match particularly because, like, I'm at a stage now where all the pieces are coming together, and I want to prove myself as one of the best in Europe. I'm in such a position that I just, I think a lot of people would sleep in the position I'm in, and I just want to work harder. I've challenged the best in Ireland. I've beaten them. I have to move on elsewhere. I've already challenged the best in France, and I want Coro in the pavilion at the next RCW show. And I'm going to keep going country by country. I'm going to keep using that platform, and I'm just going to prove myself as one of the best in Europe. In terms of other places like OTT, like I'm only starting to make my mark there, and it's a very exciting time. So you're going to see a lot more of myself there. And then just in terms of like the last 6 months, I've got to wrestle in probably, I think it was 5 countries in the last 6 months. And I just want to add more countries to that. I want to wrestle in new places. I want to wrestle new names, new faces, and it's the only way is up.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And you've been an absolute pleasure to talk to today, man. Absolutely pleasure. Do you want to tell people where to follow you and where they can come to see you next?
You can find me on all of the platforms at CBL for Coppers Gold. What shows have we got upcoming this weekend? We've got Fight Factory Project Next Gen. This is where the younger talents of Fight Factory get to showcase what they've been learning, what they've been practicing, and put it into action on a show there. I'll be performing at some capacity. We've got RCW at the end of the month. We've got OTT in the Ambassador in Dublin City Centre, which is a big step up in itself. I'll be over in Scotland as well, so in CPW. So I've got a lot of stuff coming up, so I'm very excited.
Absolutely. And guys, make sure to go and check those events out. Make sure to check CBL out on social media. He is definitely, like he said, he's coming up a lot more, big step up, coming up with the Ambassador show. And yeah, guys, make sure to come back to Fight for Scraps for future interviews. Make sure to like, subscribe, and see you all in the next one.